or shake her head? No? Hello! Sorry for that very awkward introduction. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this advanced event for the International Servant Leader Summit. Hi, my name is Jim, and it is really an honor to be with you today. I'm here to talk to you about servant leadership today, but I'm looking through the participant list as I just did. I feel like I'm not 100% worthy. I see some names of some people on this list who certainly know servant leadership a lot better than I do. I see people on like famous people like Don Frick, Dick Pieper, Clayton Cottrell, Tom Thibodeau, and I don't want to get people excited, but I could have swore I saw Santa Claus as I was going through the video feeds. So lots of really important people. I see in the chat people saying lost sound. Can someone give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me? Are we good on sound? We're good. Excellent. So they showed me how to do something very neat with my PowerPoint that Mariah just did. Oh, wow, look at you guys. You people seem to be in a terrific mood this morning. Don't worry, I'll take care of that for you. Not a problem at all. Let me see if I can get my PowerPoint going for you with my face really cute in the lower right-hand corner. Hey, look, it's me, and I'm on my PowerPoint. I've only got so far to go. Great. So we are here today to talk about this whole servant leadership thing. And what you see on the screen behind me is a picture of a guy named Bob Greenleaf, who 50 years ago to the year 1970 published a little essay called The Servant as Leader and really launched the modern servant leadership movement, which a lot of us are big fans of. Some of you are real experts on. I'm just a student of it. I'm a professor here at the State University of New York in Buffalo, where it's snowing today. Very Christmassy, but very uncomfortable for this boy from New Orleans. We're all big fans of the servant leadership. At least I assume we are. Maybe you came here to heckle me, and that's fine too. But believe it or not, if you're a fan, there are skeptics of servant leadership. There are people who say that this doesn't work, that this isn't realistic, that this couldn't possibly be what the world needs. And here's a fun fact. If you Google skepticism, one of the first pictures that pops up is this one, which I think is an amazing picture of what skepticism really is. I recently co-wrote a chapter for a book, actually a couple of chapters for a book for the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership. I don't know if it's going to let me show it to you, but it's called Inspiration for Servant Leaders. Now, I'm not trying to make any money. I get no money from selling this. It all goes straight to the nonprofit Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership. But in one of these chapters, we talked quite a bit about the myths of servant leadership and whether they're true and whether they're not. I don't have a lot of time with you today, but I wanted to go through 3 of them with you and just tell you what the evidence says around them and maybe hopefully give you a new way to think about some of these things. And the first one, and one that I've heard a lot, is that servant leadership is soft. This is actually one of the very first presentations I ever did on servant leadership as I began my academic journey. I was at a hospital, of all places, and believe it or not, after I got done, a gentleman in the back of the room, I'm assuming he was an important doctor because he was wearing a white lab coat, and I always assume people in white lab coats are important. He stood up and said, "Well, that all sounds really good, but everyone knows that servant leadership is just soft. We don't need that kind of thing. Nobody needs to be a Care Bear." Those were his exact words. I'll never forget them. And that got me thinking a lot about servant leadership and about Care Bears. See, I wanted to rebut this assertion that servant leadership was like a Care Bear, that it was soft, but I'm a guy. I didn't play with Care Bears growing up. I have 2 sons. They didn't play with Care Bears growing up. So I started researching Care Bears to see how maybe we could relate this to servant leadership. Now, what you hopefully see behind me on the screen is a picture of, I thought this was Sunshine Bear, but it turns out it's Funshine Bear. They all have names like this. And apparently, for those of you who are not familiar with Care Bears, it's this anthropomorphic group of tribally oriented ursines that tattoo their names on their stomachs. And there's hundreds of them, which is really weird because there's only like one guy, but there's hundreds of these Care Bears, and they all are about different names and emotions. And I thought, if servant leadership is like a Care Bear, well, which Care Bear would servant leadership be like? And I searched and searched on the internet, and I'm no expert at this. I found a picture of one that maybe might be a little closer than this one to servant leadership, sometimes at least. I couldn't find a name for this. Maybe some of you guys are experts at Care Bears and you know which one I'm talking about, if anybody knows which one this is. The point I'm trying to make is that servant leadership is not all sunshine and roses and ponies and rainbows and things like that. It's not soft like that. And this goes right back to the words of Robert Greenleaf. And this is from his first collection of essays, Servant Leadership, A Journey into the Nature of Legitimate Power. Take a look at these quotes. First line, "Am I sensitive to the needs and aspirations of all who may be affected by what I say, think, and do?" And I like to stop there and ask people to think about that for a second. Think about the way when you were first entering the work world, the adult world, you looked at your boss. Think about the way you looked at your boss's boss. Think about the way you think about your CEO or people, you know, who are a level or two above you. Odds are you kind of put them on a pedestal. Odds are you watch them very carefully. Odds are you think, wow, if I could be like that someday, that would be amazing. Think of the leaders you respect. Now you might be in this position as a leader. Maybe you're in this position now, maybe you'll be it in the future, maybe you want to be in this position. When we are in these positions, whether we like it or not, we're role models. We have people watching us. In fact, sometimes when I'm doing a big corporate event and I've got lots of people from a company in the room with me, remember back before COVID and like the first Bush administration when we could do things like that, I'll notice that people in the room are sitting the same way the CEO is. For instance, if the CEO is sitting with their legs propped up, I'll notice a lot of people doing the same thing. We even unconsciously, we will model what our leaders do. So if you call yourself a leader, if you want to be a leader, are you sensitive to the needs and aspirations of everyone who's affected by every little thing you do? And then being sensitive, Greenleaf wrote, are you willing to say the words and take the actions that build constructive tension? Boy, I love that phrase. Authentic conversations, sometimes difficult feedback, pushing people. See, the servant leaders knows that if people keep doing what they've always done, they're going to keep getting what they've always gotten. Greenleaf wrote a lot about we need to push people to the next level. We need to push people just a little bit beyond where they think their limits are because they don't see their limits the same way they should. Am I willing to say, I mean, there's the big quote right there. There's the money quote for those who say that servant leadership is just soft. Am I willing to say, do it now instead of do it tomorrow, it'll be easier? Greenleaf did not write about ponies and roses and always saying yes and always giving followers everything they want. He talked about giving them what they need to prosper, what they thrive, what they need to grow, both in their current position and in their future positions, and just as human beings. That's really the kind of thing that Greenleaf is about. And really, there's nothing soft about that. There's nothing soft at all about pushing people, about saying, I believe you can do more. You sold $1,000 worth of widgets today? Great. I think tomorrow you can do 1,100. You think you can get me that report by 5 o'clock Friday? Fantastic. I'll expect it by 4 o'clock Friday. We're always growing, little by little, bit by bit, not unachievable stretch goals, but let's just get a little bit higher than where we've been, where we were before, so on and so forth. One of my favorite writers, this is a picture of Jean Phillips, perhaps better known to you as Dear Abby. And here's one of my favorite quotes from her. Sometimes the most important conversations are the most difficult to engage in. We've actually done studies, research studies here at the State University of New York in Buffalo, where we found one of the most important attributes of an entrepreneur's success is whether or not they're willing to have difficult conversations with their employees. And this was really interesting for entrepreneurs because, you know, usually a very small team, you know, you can't afford to lose people, especially in this day and age. But no, being too nice can actually hurt you. And the servant leader knows that. They know I'm not being nice to be nice. I'm being nice because this is a person worthy of respect. But because they're worthy of respect, sometimes they're worth a little more honesty. They're worth a few more difficult conversations. So no, servant leadership is not always soft. If you think servant leadership is always soft, well, then you and I have different definitions of servant leadership. But more importantly, you've got a different definition than the one that's been written about by its founder, Bob Greenleaf. A second myth is, and I've just been talking about this, servant leadership is just about being nice to followers. Like, that's the emphasis. If you go to SHRM's website, if you go to Wikipedia, if you go to lots of websites on the internet, you say, well, servant leadership's all about doing the right thing by followers. And that kind of follows in line with what I just said, that's what sets it apart. That's the big differentiator. That's what it focuses on. And I'm not really sure that that's true either. And let me tell you one of my favorite stories. This is actually from my TED Talk that I think illustrates why. On the screen in front of you, you see a picture of a man with a stellar mustache. I mean, I'm 1/8 Native American. I am incapable of growing. I get jealous. And I think, you know, Mariah, you'd look fantastic with a mustache like that. I mean, wouldn't she? Wow. This is a picture of Joshua Lewis Chamberlain, who in the 19th century was an academic. Civil War started. He was so moved by the cause, and he was up in Maine. I should have added that. He was so moved by the cause that he signed up to be an officer, and he became a commanding officer. And I want you to imagine, as I tell this story, picture yourself in his shoes. Picture yourself with those long, beautiful, glorious, flowing mustaches rolling down your face. And imagine you're in the situation that I'm about to describe to you. It is July 2nd of 1863. It's the eve of the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, if you think about it, Gettysburg's in Pennsylvania. The Civil War is between the North and the South. So if we're fighting all the way up in Pennsylvania, well, the good guys aren't doing well. The Union's doing poorly. This is the moment where it looks like the Confederates are absolutely going to win this thing. You, Josh Chamberlain, command the 20th Maine. You're considered the weak link in the Union Army. Started out with 1,600 men, down to about 250 because, well, war is hell. Lots of rough stuff going on, abandonment, stress, and attrition. You tell high command that you're ready to fight in the battle tomorrow. They say, okay, we need you to defend this point of particular strategic importance called Little Round Top. You go scout out the position. You say, there's no way I have enough men for that. I need more men. High command says, we don't have any more men. You say, you don't understand. I've got to have more men. They say, nope, there's no more men. You finally say, it's impossible to guard this point without more men. And so they send you 120 mutineers from the 2nd Maine and order them to join you. He said as he leaned back so you could see the word join. And here's the story for the 2nd Maine. It's really a kind of a tragic comic story that could never, ever happen in today's world of government mishaps. Basically, these men in the 2nd Maine, most of them couldn't read, right? They signed contracts for military service. They just put an X on it. They thought they were signing a contract for 2 years of military service, but due to a government bureaucratic mix-up, they accidentally signed a contract for 3 years and they never knew it. And now at this point, the 2 years are up and they're about to go home to their friends, to their families, to their farms, to their lives, to their wives. And men with guns stop them and say, no, you got to fight for 1 more year. No, I don't. I signed a 2-year contract. Yes, you do. It's a 3-year contract. These men got bamboozled. They were cheated. They thought they could go home. Now they can't. So they're ready to walk out the door. You, Josh Chamberlain, need to get them to fight for you. You tell high command, what am I going to do with 120 mutineers? High command says, well, just shoot them if they disobey you. You can do that. Now, again, I asked you, put yourself in Josh Chamberlain's shoes. You've got to defend this point. You cannot do it without these 120 men fighting at your side. So I'm going to shut up for just 4 seconds so I can think, based on everything you know about leadership, based on everything you've experienced from your managers and your coaches and your parents and your religious leaders. If you were in this position, you're giving a speech to them, what do you think you would say? I see some thoughtful faces out there. What would you really say? You know, I'll tell you, I usually, when I do this, I do a big, much longer version of this and in person, you know, in the non-COVID world. Once I was doing this presentation at a toy company, and a lady in the back of the room, after I said, well, what would you say? She stood up and she was one of those ladies who was dressed in pink from head to toe, even had a pink hat. And the first thing she said was, well, if I was in that situation, I would shoot one of them in the head before I even started talking just to make sure I had their attention. I said, wow, you make toys for my kids. That explains a lot. So my students are usually shocked when I tell them that there are no surviving clips of this speech from 1863 on Apple Video or on YouTube or anything like that. They offer to look for me and say, I'm sure it's out there. And I say, no, I don't think you're going to find it. But what we do have are diaries and journals and embedded newspaper reporters. And we're able to kind of piece it together. We don't have the exact words probably, but we kind of know, apparently it was a very short speech in real life. And here I'm going to read it to you. This is about what it is. It wasn't more than a minute or so. Josh Chamberlain said, I've been told that if you don't come with me and serve in this Union Army, I can shoot you. But you know I won't do that. Not to good Maine men. We're down below half strength. The Confederates are coming and we need you, no doubt about that. Many of us have come and served and died because it was the right thing to do. We're an army going out to set other men free, and what we're fighting for in the end is for each other. We don't know the future, we can't plan for it much, but the cause for which we fight is higher, our thought is wider, and that thought is our power. But here's what I think. If we lose this fight, the war will be over. We'll lose the whole damn war. But if you choose to come with us, I'll be personally grateful. That was the whole speech. And as a student of leadership, as a student of servant leadership, it's amazing to me. I mean, if you think about being a boss, you've got a lot of power over your employees, right? I mean, you can give them a bad shift, you can give them a bad evaluation, you can fail to promote them, you can even fire them, you can ruin their lives. If you're like Steve Jobs, you can even blacklist them, but you can't kill them. Josh Chamberlain had the biggest power over his followers that we could possibly imagine. Unless you work with the mafia, you don't have that kind of power, I hope, over your followers. But he gave it away with the very first line. He said, you know, I won't do that. I won't use this power. I'm not going to. And he did that. He wrote, I did that because I don't want them to fight for me because they have to. I want them to fight for us because they want to. And all 120 of those men signed up that night. And if you don't know the story of Little Round Top, it's a pretty inspiring story, but the short version is they were doing fantastic until they ran out of ammunition. And while most of us, myself included, would have probably run like hell at a time like that, they didn't. Instead, somebody called for the bayonet charge, which completely took the Confederates by surprise and broke the ranks, allowing them to flank another unit, set off a chain reaction, a domino effect, if you will, that ended up winning the battle for the Union. And that battle was the turning point of the Civil War. So why am I going to this about servant leadership? I was supposed to talk about it's more than just followers. Well, because this is a great example of servant leadership to me. Take a look at this. He could have coerced. He could have told them, you have to do this or I will kill you. He said, no, this is not what I want to do. I want to persuade them, which is exactly what Bob Greenleaf wrote, The Servant Leader does. Anybody can coerce someone to do something, but it takes a true leader to make someone want to do something. That's a great line from Dwight Eisenhower. He persuaded the men beyond to do it. Why did they do it? Because the cause was noble and worth doing. It's something, and think about where you work. Think about what you do. Is your cause noble and worth doing? I like to tell the story. I had two banks in a room that I was speaking to once, and I asked them, is what you do noble and worth doing? And one of the banks stood up and said, well, not really. You know, we do investment products, we do savings account, we make money. That's what we do. And then another bank who had the exact same goods and services stood up and said, well, of course, what we do is noble and worth doing. We help people afford their dreams. We help people buy their first car, buy their first home, retire in comfort. What could be more noble than that? Two different banks doing the exact same things, but it's all in how the leaders talked about it. It's how they framed it. This is why we exist. Is it just to make profit or is it to make the world a better place? Josh Chamberlain persuaded them they had a better future if they came together for the goal. He respected them. He helped them. He understood that they had been wronged. It would have been easy for him to say, oh, well, I'm going to let you go. You know, you don't have to fight. We've done you wrong. He said, no. I want to help you, but I need you to help others. And by that unique approach to leadership, turned the tide of a war, changed the course of the nation. That was the moment that changed the course of the battle. That battle changed the course of the Civil War. The Civil War changed the course of the United States of America. That's the power of servant leadership right there. And it's not just about being nice to followers, because if it was just about being nice to followers, he would have said, you guys do what you want to do. You guys do what you need to do. Instead, it was about, let's make the world a better place. Let's come together and make the world a better place. And I need your help to do that. This is my definition that I use a lot for servant leadership, which is tricky because, you know, Greenleaf never left us a solid, concrete definition of servant leadership. He actually laughed about that. He thought that was a good thing, but I feel like I need one. I like to define things. I'm a geek. I'm a professor. Servant leadership is humbly influencing and developing others. I think that's just leadership. We're influencing and developing others towards continuous and meaningful improvement for all stakeholders. And I have written in a bunch of academic papers, that's what makes servant leadership different. Continuous and meaningful improvement for all stakeholders. And that includes your followers. Yes, they're part of that. I'm not saying they're not, but also other employees in the organization who maybe don't report to you, your customers, your partners, your vendors, the broader community, and of course the organization itself and its shareholders. You got to be making money too. Greenleaf wrote, you know, if you're serving today without making any profit, well, then you won't be around tomorrow to be serving either. You've got to do all of these. So stakeholders include, and you may be thinking, how does one leader service all of these? This isn't realistic. This isn't what business is about. Well, I'd say, here's a picture of some people who disagree with you. This is a picture of some of the CEOs from what's called the Business Roundtable. It's a group of 200 CEOs of the biggest companies in the world. You'll see Amazon and Google and Apple, JP Morgan, GE, I mean, they're all represented in there. On August 19th of 2019, they released a statement called The Purpose of a Corporation. And I'm talking for-profits here. And they said that no longer can we only focus on profit. We have to keep focusing on that, but no longer can we only do that. We also have to focus on, well, our customers, the good of our employees, the good of our partners and vendors, and the good of our communities, making the world a better place. They were basically arguing for the servant leadership approach, which brings me to the third myth of servant leadership that I want to talk to you about, that it gets in the way of profit. And this one to me is actually the most reasonable for people to think about. I mean, how could you do all of this and still make money or accomplish your mission if you're a nonprofit? Wouldn't you be pulled in too many directions? Is that even possible? And that comes to a mindset that's been around ever since an economist named Milton Friedman wrote an article in the New York Times Sunday magazine back in 1970, coincidentally, the exact same year that Greenleaf wrote, his Servant as Leader, in which he argued that the only purpose of a business had to be profit, making money for the owners. He said that's the ethical thing. In fact, he argued stakeholders, shareholders give a business, they invest in a business, they expect it to make more money. Whereas Greenleaf said that the most successful businesses are going to make more money. The most successful leaders are going to inspire their employees by focusing on a lot of different things, by taking care of them, by taking care of customers, by prioritizing even communities, societies, trying to do the right thing. And there have been debates about this for decades. Well, I'm here to tell you that there have been studies that try to address this. I mean, really, what is the truth? Is it possible at all for a business? Let's stay with business, because that's the hardest case here. I think it's easy for a nonprofit to say we'll be a servant leader. Is it harder for a for-profit? How can we make money through this? Greenleaf said he could. Greenleaf said keep doing everything you've been doing to make a profit, but you got to add all this stuff on top of it, and you make a profit by doing this stuff. And let me tell you, research found that this is not the right model. What I'm showing you, I was kind of hoping this would be the right model. This isn't the right model, but this is. It turns out that by taking care of you, and you didn't need me to tell you this, this is what we hope is true. This is what we think is true. But I'm telling you right here, in a replicated study of 600 of the Fortune 1000, researchers have found and replicated that businesses that take care of their employees, take care of their customers, take care of their communities, and do the right thing make more money. I call it the paradox of leadership. And it's the big evidence for servant leadership that it works for businesses. The businesses that take care of employees, customers, and communities, they actually make more money in the long term than the ones that don't. Here's a partial list. There have been over 200 peer-reviewed and replicated studies on, does this servant leadership thing really work? Or is it a waste of time? Is it possible to do all these things? And what they found, that even while servant leaders focus on making the community better place, helping their employees lead more complete lives, helping their customers really succeed, it also leads to job performance, going above and beyond at work, creativity. The employees of servant leaders have greater decision-making skill. My own research found that. Intrinsic motivation to work hard for the business. Organizational commitment, I want to stay, I don't want to quit. Firm financial performance, stock valuation, return on assets. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is only a partial list. Again, over 200 peer-reviewed, replicated papers have been published that show that servant leadership works. And in fact, it seems to work better than many other approaches to leadership. I was going to post a file in here, actually, but it seems like my option to do so has disappeared. So maybe we'll try to do that after the breakout. So I was gonna post a file to the chat, an article that we recently published alongside the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership, a few of us reviewing these hundreds of papers and just showing, here's the evidence for servant leaders affecting customers and employees and communities positively while building big profits. So these three myths that we talked about in this book, Inspiration for Servant Leaders, that it's soft, that it's just about helping followers, that there's no way to do all this while building profit. There's research evidence that shows that these are 100% false. In fact, I'm sorry? Oh, no, I just lost my chain of thought, but I see I'm just about out of time anyway. So let me just lead with this. If you'd like to learn more about servant leadership, why it works, how it works, what are the steps you can take to be more of a servant leader, to become a stronger servant leader, I invite you to join us, where we'll go so in depth on this at the International Servant Leadership Summit this June. And that's my email address. I work with the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership. I'm actually a board member, a trustee, as Mr. Pieper is a trustee emeritus, as well as a researcher with our University at Buffalo Center for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness. If you'd like more information on any of the research I talked about, the servant leadership stuff, please feel free to reach out to me. And while you're in your breakout rooms, we're going to try to put this article I just talked about that summarizes all this research with citations, so you'll have access to it in the chat. Mariah, back to you.